Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Cloudcast/ServerlessCast. We are coming to you live from the massive studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Actually, I'm coming to you live from a hotel room in San Francisco, and Aaron's coming to you live from Raleigh, North Carolina. Aaron, how are you today, man?
Good. Yeah, we might as well call this the Hotel Cast because you're at a hotel, our guests are in a hotel. Everyone's going to be on spotty Wi-Fi, except for me. I'm kind of anchoring it down. I'm doing the recording from here, so hopefully the quality won't be too bad, but we'll ask you to kind of bear with us a little bit with audio quality.
Yeah, we're coming from all corners of the globe. So, before we jump into the show, I'm going to put a little bit of a teaser out there for anybody who follows the serverless stuff, and I know we're seeing a bigger audience around that. We've got some pretty cool giveaways and some very cool discounts for anybody that's interested in this space, wants to learn stuff in this space. So, I'm going to tease that a little bit. You're going to need to stick around towards the end. We'll give those away at the end, but it's going to be a really good show. Really excited to have the guys from A Cloud Guru back on the show. It's been about a year. So Sam Kroonenburg and Peter Sbarski, co-founders of A Cloud Guru. Guys, how are you? How are things down in sunny Australia? You guys are down in Sydney, I believe.
We are, yeah, very good, very good. It's actually quite nice and sunny here, and we're down here for the AWS Summit, Sydney Summit.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's been really interesting here in Sydney over the past few days. And today, I think, is the last day of our summit.
Yeah. So we like to think that we punch above our weight a little bit in Australia in terms of tech, so it's nice to see it. It's about 5,000 to 7,000 people here for the Sydney Summit. So it's a really great community, really great atmosphere.
Wow, very, very cool. Very cool. Well, listen, the last time that some folks from A Cloud Guru were on, not you two. It was Ant and Ryan. We were talking more about AWS training and the way that you guys were going about doing it. And we've seen a lot of really good feedback from listeners saying, hey, I'm going to take a course. This is really easy. But one of the little tidbits that we talked about at the end of that show, which again was a year ago, feels like it was just the other day, was you guys, Ryan had mentioned, hey, we run our whole platform on serverless. We've been doing this stuff for a while. We're kind of getting our feet wet on it, and so let's start there. Where are you guys? What's been going on with A Cloud Guru over the last year, and let's talk a little bit about your experience in serverless, because you guys are kind of becoming the face of a lot of these activities that are going on, ServerlessConf and a bunch of other stuch.
Yeah, cool. So it might be worth just giving a very quick backstory as to kind of how we got here. So we launched our very first A Cloud Guru course back in January 2015 on udemy.com. That was my brother and co-founder Ryan who launched those courses. And a few months later, I was chatting with him. I'm a software developer. I'm ex-Microsoft. I used to work on the Windows team in Seattle, and I worked on the SharePoint team in Norway for a while. And I was having a chat with Ryan. We were talking about, learning and cloud and communities. And we thought, it was our vision was basically, could we build the biggest cloud computing school on the planet? Could we build the community for people to come and learn cloud? And we started thinking about, if we could build our own school and we could bring that community together and give some really cool learning features, we really think we could build that community. So we got looking at it. So basically what I did was I had 4 weeks leave. I had a full-time job. I had 4 weeks leave, vacation time owing to me. So I got on a plane. I took their wife and kids down to Tasmania because I live in Australia, and took them to the in-laws and left them with the family. And I basically locked myself away in a dark room for 4 weeks. And my mission was, can I build a learning management system and online platform in 4 weeks? Can I build and that's actually kind of the genesis of why we went serverless. It wasn't a grand vision to build this thing, with serverless technologies. It was actually born out of necessity. It was because I worked out that we could innovate. We could get this thing to market in 4 weeks and innovate a lot faster if I could leverage the work of others. So that's really what it was all about. What can I use? What third-party services can I use? How can I not manage infrastructure? How can I not manage servers? How can I have a lot of this already done for me? And we also knew we had to scale quickly, because at that point we already had about 10,000 people taking our courses, and we knew that once we launched this school, It wasn't going to be your typical startup that, doesn't have any customers. You've got to find product market fit. We knew we had that already, so we knew it was going to scale fast, but we weren't going to have an ops team behind us in the early days. So that was why I made the decision to build it that way. So we launched the school, and it went crazy. And it's been basically going crazy ever since. It's been such a great journey. There's so many amazing people that we've met and so many engineers out there. Everyone's trying to learn cloud. Everybody's on this cloud journey. And it's been so much fun to really help people in those learnings, help them get their AWS certifications, help them learn cloud. So we're at about 200,000 customers now. We launched the school about 18 months ago. So it's been it's been a lot of fun. It's been some really interesting scaling challenges. Not so much the technology has scaled perfectly with serverless. It's more the challenges of scaling the business and, how do you support 200,000 customers?
That's right. Yeah. I remember when Sam took the initial 4 weeks off and came back, I was shocked because he had a whole platform built. He had forums, he had payments processing. Our users could sign up and stream videos. They could talk. They had all these features, and I was like, "Wow, Sam! Let's talk about this. How did you put this together?" Because we've spent years. We actually worked together before, and we've spent years building, your traditional server-based software. Yeah. And there's no way we could have done it, or Sam could have done it, had he followed kind of a more traditional approach to software development. So this was an eye-opener. At least for me, that was very interesting.
Definitely.
The way Sam put it all together.
I actually think we wouldn't have a business without serverless technologies, because there's no way I could have done it in that time. So it would have failed. We wouldn't have actually got to market. Yeah. It would have taken me a lot longer, and we might have missed the boat. So I think that rapid development accelerator that we got through using serverless technologies is actually the reason that the business has succeeded.
I think it's a lesson for a lot of startups. We're seeing a lot of startups right now, kind of going with serverless because they can move so quickly, because they can be so agile, because they can innovate so rapidly. And not just startups, actually, enterprises as well. They can see that they need to kind of leverage these technologies in order to overtake competition and kind of, focus on business value rather than tech.
And Sam, what made you, when you did kind of lock yourself in the room, what made you think, okay, I want to go develop this framework versus a traditional way? Like, what was that kind of very first innovation, if you will, of like, okay, you need to design something. You've got all the business requirements sitting in front of you. You have the technical requirements sitting in front of you. But at the same time, you're doing something that honestly probably didn't even have a name yet on it and didn't necessarily have a framework around it. So you were building a lot of that as you went. And so what made you really be the genesis of this idea? And then also, if you could also explain a little bit of, when you say like it just kind of grew very seamlessly from a technical standpoint, what exactly do you mean by that? Which portions of it specifically?
Yeah, so back then there was no term serverless. Nobody was using the word serverless. Lambda was in beta. API Gateway didn't exist. And again, I keep coming back to, I don't really believe that many startups actually come from a grand vision. I think a lot of grand visions are applied to businesses after the fact, once they found something that worked. I'm sure there are good exceptions to that. But I think, if I think about my thought process, I had randomly come across a company called Auth0 at that time in my life. That Auth0 do authentication as a service. We still use them today. They're fantastic. But that allowed me to drop a login box and use a sign up, and all of those features basically outsourced to Auth0. So someone comes to our website, they hit login, Auth0 render that login box. I literally log into the Auth0 dashboard and I can say, I want our users to sign in with Google, Facebook, Twitter, and I just toggle them on, and suddenly it's all there and it works, and they manage our user database. So I was looking at that and I thought, wow, just by dropping this service in, I've saved myself 2 or 3 weeks of building a user authentication system, just a basic one that doesn't have half of the features of Auth0. So I was looking at that, and I'd also come across Firebase at the time, which is like a web-connected database. So it's a database that your clients, web browsers, their actual end devices, can connect to directly to download data and even save data to the database. So I'd been looking at that, and I was really impressed by what Firebase people. And I looked at it. I realized I could hook up a website. I could have the app connect directly to the database. So have the web app, the website connect directly to Firebase. I could have authentication served by Auth0. And I just started taking that concept further. I thought, well, this is great. I've managed to actually take my web server out of the loop for all of these scenarios. How much further can I take that? I've got to write a bit of business logic in the back end, to do things behind the scenes. But do I really want to spin up web servers and worry about scaling them and worry about, keeping them patched and everything else when I've already got so many problems solved by these third-party services? So I started looking at, what third-party services could allow me to just run some code behind the scenes in the cloud. And the beauty, obviously, of Firebase and Auth0 is they'd solve the scaling challenges as well, because their services scale automatically with load. So I looked at Lambda. I was obviously looking a lot at AWS at the time. Ryan was producing the AWS courses. Lambda looked really good, but there was no way to connect it to the front. There was no way to connect it to the front end via HTTP. You couldn't call Lambda from the web. It was only internal in AWS. API Gateway didn't exist at that point. So I found this system called WebTask, which is basically a precursor to Lambda. And it's actually built by the guys at Auth0. It's kind of an offshoot from something they built for their own infrastructure. So it's basically function execution as a service. Write a little bit of JavaScript and have it execute in the cloud for you on demand when your website calls it. And they manage scaling challenges. So it was it's a fantastic system. It's still out there. It's still being used. Tomasz actually comes and talks. Tomasz, who invented it, comes and talks at. He's been to every ServerlessConf so far.
Yeah, it's a great system. Yeah, it works very well. Yeah.
It's really good. So we built it on that originally. And when API Gateway came out and things got a bit more mature on the Amazon side, we switched over. And a lot of that for us, nothing bad about WebTask, but we like to practice what we preach. Yeah, we're a cloud Amazon training school, and we really like to show the community that, hey, we can teach you this stuff because we're doing it.
We've done it. Yeah, exactly.
And we know the pitfalls, and we know it's not all silver bullets and rainbows and unicorns. There are challenges, but don't worry. We can take you through them because we've been through them. Yeah. And sorry, what was the second part to your question?
Just wondering from a technology standpoint, how did everything hold up, and kind of what were some of your kind of either pain points or like you were saying, things that just worked perfectly? What did you end up kind of growing out of and growing into? You may have already answered it, quite frankly.
I think, if you look at services like Firebase and Auth0, these kind of third-party services, Stripe, PayPal, they're set up to scale. Because that's what they do for their clients. They need to scale to have a business that can survive. But they need to scale to large numbers of requests and data throughput. So they've solved the scaling challenges there. But then there's also obviously scaling challenges on our side. So our website is actually just hosted on a CDN. So we don't serve our website from any web servers. There's no Ruby on Rails servers or .NET servers that every time you hit our website, you're not connecting through. You're just going straight to a standard content delivery network, to just a standard CDN, which makes it really fast to load the initial pages because, it's edge networks. And that obviously inherently scales. And then calls through to our backend or calls through to Lambda and API Gateway. So when that website loads in someone's browser and it needs to call into our backend cloud functions, it's actually just calling our API as just a whole series of Lambda functions that get invoked. So every time someone requests something from our API, Amazon just spins up a Lambda function to serve that. So that, obviously Lambda is very, very scalable. And so Amazon provision all of that infrastructure for us and keep it there ready to go so that when people make requests, it's all there.
Yeah, I think to me there were 3 challenges that have been resolved now to some extent. So number 1 was the lack of tooling, right? When Sam started especially, there weren't really any frameworks for serverless. So Sam had to roll his own basically internal framework for orchestration, for deployments, for testing and continuous integration. Number two was, I guess,
which I can tell you our dev team are very glad to see the back of. That is now all gone.
Sure.
We're all on this framework, so it's a lot easier for sure.
I mean, even a year ago, it was just myself and Peter in the dev team. We've scaled that out a lot in the last year, so we don't. I don't do a lot of active development anymore. Neither does Pete, but we have a team that have come on and do that for us, and they've moved it all over to Serverless framework.
And they are amazing. So if they're listening now, they should know. They are awesome.
They've been fantastic.
And I guess the second point, the second challenge was the maturity of some of the services. Obviously, especially like Sam said, when Lambda came out, there was no API gateway, so it was impossible to invoke Lambda functions via HTTP. But still, now you can, and things are maturing. But basically day by day.
Early on, API Gateway was missing some pretty basic.
That's right.
Cause, to add cause support to something in your API was just such a headache. You had to. It was like so many things to configure. Whereas now they just have a button. Enable cause.
That's it. And that's
right.
The challenge, and we are working on it right now. Actually, as part of our content for A Cloud Guru, there weren't any kind of reference implementations or reference architectures, patterns, designs. So we had to kind of go through that ourselves. We had to try things, see how they work, refactor, restructure, re-architect. And that's been an amazing learning experience. And, we've now produced courses and we have talks that we do kind of about our journey. But that's something that, kind of we had to go through ourselves. And I think at least this year and next year, we'll focus a little bit more on architectures and design patterns, especially for serverless architectures. Because I think a lot of people want to get into it, but they don't know where to begin, right? Or how to actually solve the problem that they have. So that's.
And it's an interesting one in that there's great frameworks now and great tooling like Serverless Framework, and that has been a huge accelerator for us. It solves so many of the tooling gap issues between what Amazon provide and what you need to be a productive developer. But I also recommend that if you're just getting started with serverless and you've never done any serverless development, I would generally recommend just starting with the basics, because when you use a framework, it's all hidden.
It's all abstracted away from you, right?
It's magic, Yeah, absolutely. It's magic. It just, you set it up and it works. And so I always suggest to people, go and make a basic Lambda function, configure API gateway. I mean, do it in the user interface in Amazon, don't worry about scripting it. Just get in there and get your hands dirty. And then once you kind of learn the basics, go and learn a framework that'll automate a lot of this for you, that'll give you a lot of helpers. We ran a workshop here in Sydney 2 days ago, showing people how to do it all kind of manually from scratch. And some people came up to me in the workshop and they said, we've actually been using Serverless Framework for a while and building a serverless app. And it's actually really interesting to go outside the framework and do this just straight in the Amazon user interface in the console. It's like, I actually kind of understand how it all hangs together now.
Exactly. And now they actually know how to debug and where to look for problems if things do go wrong.
That's it.
So Brian, go ahead, Brian.
Well, it's sort of the same mindset that like we've had Kelsey Hightower on before, and Kelsey spends a lot of time around things like Kubernetes, and he's gone as far as to build out this series called Kubernetes the Hard Way. And, he walks you from, scraping it off the floor and getting it on a machine and booting it and all, it's essentially the same thing you guys are saying, which is at some point you want to use the tools that are going to make your life easier, but unless you sort of understand what's going on under the covers, you run the risk that something's going to start happening and you're going to be like, I don't know. I never took the training wheels off my bike. I don't know why these things are happening. So that's good advice. And obviously you guys are giving people the training facilities to be able to kind of go do that stuff, which is cool. So one of the things that's you guys have been fostering quite a bit, you've been leading quite a bit, is this Serverless conference, which I want to say you guys are up to about the 4th iteration of them or 5th iteration. It's been in New York, it's been in Asia, it's been in Europe. It's coming back to Austin, Texas here in a couple of weeks. Give us a sense what's going on with the Serverless conference. Where is it growing? Who's attending? Who's speaking? Just give us the rundown on what's going on in that space.
Again, I might just start very briefly with the backstory.
Yeah, please go. Yeah.
So the Serverless conference, it early last year, we were doing a lot with serverless, but the term serverless had been invented by that point, and everybody was kind of getting interested in, hey, what's the serverless thing, everybody? And our co-founder, Ant Stanley, he was sitting in a bar in Amsterdam, I think, and having a chat with a few of his friends, and they were saying, hey, there's no serverless conference. And so from there, we kind of all got together and we thought, like, why isn't there a serverless conference? You know, everybody, it's new and it's different, and everybody's talking about it. And like, there's early adopters, but there's nowhere for people to share their stories and experiences. And you know, we wanted people to be able to help each other because we're very much part of that community, and we saw some of the challenges of, you know, going serverless gets you a lot of acceleration in certain areas, but it slows you down in others because of the lack of tooling. So let's get people together and let's make those tools better. So we decided to run the first serverless conference we ran in a little warehouse in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, actually. And we're all from Australia and the UK, and we had people from Amsterdam. We all flew in, and it was a really great. It was like 250 people crammed in a warehouse. We forgot to book a venue with air conditioning.
So it was called the hottest conference on earth.
Yeah, and it was like, what was it, 90-something degrees that day.
But it was so much fun. There was so much passion at the conference, and I think everybody who attended loved.
It was great. I remember we had Tim Wagner, the GM of Lambda, came out and did a keynote, and that's where he smashed up some servers, opened the conference by smashing the servers with a baseball bat. Which was, we didn't even know he was going to do that. It was amazing. I remember he said, you know, I think we're all going to remember that we were here. You know, it does kind of have that feeling about it looking back. So from there we've been running.
We ran a ServerlessConf in Tokyo following September. So that was September 2016. And then we thought, you know, we need to do a conference in Europe because there's a lot of interest, a lot of serverless activity in Europe. So we decided to do it in London. And so we had the third serverless conference at the end of October in London. And that was fantastic. We had 400 people attend the conference, a lot of excitement, a lot of passion, a lot of local companies, and a lot of people flew from overseas as well. You know, we had people from the US and even as far as New Zealand.
Yep, Japan, Australia.
So somehow in 1 year we managed to cover US, Asia, and Europe as well. And so towards the end of last year, we thought, okay, we need to circle back to the US. We need to go back and kind of continue the conversation. And so we kind of decided that Austin will be the place of the next conference. And look, just the response has been just mind-blowing. I think for the upcoming conference, we've had 150 or 160 submissions for talks. And so this is people who want to talk about serverless use cases, how they have done things, all kinds of different things, use cases, architectures, beginner talks, advanced talks.
Yeah.
People are really excited.
And we always try to have a really good mix of kind of practitioners and vendors, because it's really important to have the vendors there who are making the serverless technologies.
Yeah, and we want to hear from them as well, right? What's their vision? What are they doing next?
And what's coming? But we also, it's always important to have a really good mix. Yes. Keep it as a community-focused conference about stories, user stories, use cases.
Yeah. What is amazing to me, though, is that, this is one of the few conferences that has Amazon and Microsoft and Google and IBM together. Those the four biggest cloud vendors on Earth are all at the same conference.
And they're all sponsors.
All sponsors.
It's fantastic that they all come in and they're all really keen and making great technologies in this space. It's really awesome to have them all come and actually sponsor the conference and be a big part of it.
Sponsor and talk as well. So it would be great to hear, from the teams that are actually building this stuff, just to hear the vision that they have.
It's great to see
cloud computing.
You see the Lambda team standing alongside the Azure Functions team and the IBM OpenWhisk team and the Google Functions team. Like the guys are actually building this. That's really, really amazing.
Yeah, and really, so for folks that have up until now been kind of watching the serverless movement kind of from the sidelines, like the conferences are doing really well. You as kind of one of the original, serverless frameworks, if you will, you're doing really well. But kind of give us the current status today of is serverless just synonymous with AWS Lambda because they seem to be thought of the most that are out there? Or is this kind of a little bit of fragmentation, if you will, of all the other ones? Or you mentioned Serverless Conference. There's really there is other players in the market. I just don't know that they're nearly as well known as AWS Lambda, right? Like you were mentioning, there's really 4 frameworks out there right now. So what is your kind of thoughts on the state of the industry?
Well, look, by far at the moment, AWS and Lambda are the leaders in this space. It's absolutely. A lot of people are building software on Lambda. Yeah. But, like we said, Microsoft and IBM and Google, they are coming up and they are really investing into that space as well. So, it will be a really interesting, next 12 to 18 months to see what happens.
And you find the other vendors, they're all differentiating. So they're all coming at it slightly differently. And it's a really interesting market to watch. Like you look at what the Azure Functions team are doing, really kind of a different take on functions as a service. So, in some, so basically you can do things like you can pipe data directly into your functions in Azure Functions. So that ability, so let's say you drop a file into blob storage in Azure and you want to have Azure kick off some function to do some work in response to a new file, like a new image being uploaded, and you want to generate a thumbnail. You can configure Azure to actually pipe the raw data of that image file straight into the function. So you don't have to write code in your function to say, okay, there's a new file. First, I need to go and download all the data for that file. I need to use the SDKs for blob storage to go and get it. They actually pipe it straight in. And then you can pipe the data straight out. So they're trying to go for they're targeting a different level of abstraction there.
Yeah, absolutely. And say look at OpenWhisk. OpenWhisk supports Swift as the programming language, which is just unbelievable. Like, if you're making iOS apps for your iPhone or Mac, it's awesome. You can build a backend using Swift, and you don't need to learn another language.
Yeah.
So
for app developers, that's huge. And even Google Functions have this great ability. You can live debug your functions in production. So you can set breakpoint in the web browser on your function. It won't actually break the function because that would be bad. But it will capture, say, all of the state of all the variables. So as these functions are being executed, at that point, it'll go and capture, okay, your variable called, A or my var or something was equal to 5 at this point. So that's actually really useful insight into what's happening in production.
Yeah. I just want to do a little plug. We had all the vendors talk at the last ServerlessConf in London, and all the talks are available online on YouTube. If people go to video.serverlessconf.io, they can watch all the talks and see all the demos, and it's very interesting just to see what the vendors are building as well. And look, we're hoping that in Austin we'll continue the discussion. What are the features that the community requires? What do we need next? How can we improve the state of art as we have right now?
Yeah. And I would say the state of serverless more generally, like in the industry, we're seeing a lot of adoption. There's a lot of adoption, a lot of different companies, especially in the startup space, people who are kind of more, doing greenfields projects and doing newer things. But we also are seeing like enterprise. Coming on. The beautiful thing about serverless, let's say you're already in a cloud environment, you can just carve off a piece of your system. You can solve a small problem. It's not an all or nothing kind of approach. So you could carve off a piece of your system and maybe say, well, we're gonna rebuild this, and we're gonna hook this into Lambda to solve a new challenge. So
just look at large enterprises like Nordstrom, for example. They have an amazing serverless team. They are doing just amazing things, and they have projects on GitHub that you can go and have a look at, and you can see how they're building things with a serverless approach. Capital One, one of the largest banks in US as well, is building things on Lambda. So it's fascinating to see what's coming out.
And at the risk of talking too long, one other thing I think is important to say is we probably should have done it early on, but really trying to define what serverless is.
Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of confusion, and I think a lot of people think there's a kind of this a little bit of a feeling in the community that's a bit of a fad because they see hashtag serverless everywhere, and what does it even mean? I mean, there's obviously like the function as a service side of things. So we talk about Lambda, Azure Functions, Google Functions. Like that's the discrete execution of functions on demand in a massively scalable way, and that's really compelling. But a lot of people are calling that function as a service as opposed to serverless to try to differentiate. To me, serverless is an approach. I think I wrote a blog post on this. Serverless is kind of a theme. It's an approach to building software, which is kind of like when at the start of the show I talked about starting the school and using a lot of third-party services. It's about saying, well, I don't need to solve every problem. I want to focus on the value that my product is providing to the market, and that's where I should be focusing my efforts. So it's about looking at services, using rich web services like Firebase, Auth0, Stripe, Braintree, these kind of services. We use Periscope for our BI, and the good thing about like function as a service technology is you can kind of wire all these things together. So it's serverless to me is an architectural approach for wiring really high-value services together with your kind of cloud infrastructure that you've deployed inside a cloud provider. So you end up building these really rich apps that are architected across a range of different services and providers. Leveraging all of the great work they've done. I couldn't do authentication nearly as well as Auth0, and I'm not even going to try. And I wouldn't get any value out of doing that.
Yeah.
I think in your blog post, summarize it as function as a service plus backend as a service plus patterns and architectures. That's what serverless really is.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look at it from a kind of business value standpoint, I mean, you're the kind of really the use case here of it allowed you to go faster. It allowed you to focus on your business. It allowed you to focus on what completely made a difference, and all of the kind of, I'm using air quotes here, the guts of the system and things that wouldn't differentiate your business per se is just using another service and wiring it all together.
And there are, you've got to consider the trade-offs. There are always trade-offs. You lose some control to make sure that the companies you're using, that you've done some research on them and you understand like what's their failover strategy. I really like Charity Majors came and talked at the last two ServerlessConfs, and she talked about ops in a serverless environment. I really like what she said around say Firebase's ops team are part of our ops team. That's the way we have to consider it. If something happens at Firebase and there's an outage, we actually had an outage for about 5 minutes yesterday. They need to be responsive to us because our ops team can't operate without Firebase's ops team. So you have to really consider the implications for your business and make sure you're comfortable.
This is one of the interesting things about ServerlessConf. It's not just a conference where people kind of attend and talk about all the benefits, right? It's actually, we've had a lot of talks that about the pitfalls, right? The problems that you may experience and how would you solve them. So because people do experience problems, it's not a silver bullet.
Here's all pain you're going to experience.
But it is still worth it.
But everyone's still there, right? They're still committed, and they're there because they know that they're getting, at the raw level, they're getting real value out of it. But then, obviously the focus in the community is, well, how do we maximize that value? How do we, solve some of the tooling issues and the architectural issues?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Hey, Brian, we're kind of running up against the end of the time here. Do you want to kind of take everyone through a little bit of the announcements and kind of bring the teaser from the beginning of the podcast back around here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm going to kind of speak on behalf of Sam and Peter here. So these fine gentlemen have been, we've gotten to know them just kind of electronically and face-to-face and stuff. And they're going to be very, very generous to all of you here very quickly. So a couple of things, a couple of quick announcements that they're making sort of for you guys. The first one is if anybody wants to go to the ServerlessConf event in Austin, which is last week in April, if you use the Cloudcast 10, so all one word, no spaces, you'll get 10% off your ticket, and that's for both attending the event or the activities that you can do, sort of the hands-on activities that you can do ahead of time. So save yourself some money, get down there, go learn this stuff, go meet people.
And Brian and I will be there as well. So definitely stop by and say, hey, if you can make it. We'd love to hear if you actually use the discount code and you're going to be there. Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's part of it. And that's obviously got a timeline around it because the event is a finite period of time. The second part is very cool, though. There's a couple of things, obviously, these guys would love to see you doing more of. The first one is we'd like to get folks working on your serverless skills, learning Lambda, learning API Gateway, learning all those things. So they have a bundle on the A Cloud Guru site that we will post a discount code so you guys don't have to write this down while you're mowing the grass or walking or driving. But you'll get 30% off of the bundle that's on their site. So you can start getting up to speed on your serverless skills faster and cheaper. And then second of all, one of the most popular things that they do is the Alexa skills. Obviously, there's thousands of them. I think there's like 7,000 of them now. There's tons of them. You can get them for basically everything. But it's one of the most popular things on the A Cloud Guru site, and they are going to offer the ability to take the class for free for our Cloudcast listeners. So we will get both of those URLs and discount codes posted in the show notes. You guys will be able to get them when the show downloads. But thank you so much to Sam and Peter for being so generous. And hopefully people are going to take advantage of that and get a lot smarter and start using those skills in their business.
No worries. Thanks for that. I really encourage it around the server stuff. I really encourage people to get on and have a play. I mean, there's a couple of courses there where you'll build your first serverless apps. So you'll build a chatbot. You basically do like a clone. So it's hands-on.
Yeah, I totally agree. Please build something, try it, and look, reach out to us. Tell us what you built. If you make something cool, let us know. And we also have an awesome blog that we run, and we blog a lot about serverless.
Yes.
So if you go to read.acloud.guru, you can see a lot of our blog posts on serverless, including Sam's blog, where he defines serverless.
Yeah, and we also have a section of our blog where we invite Alexa champions. Some of the people that Amazon have named Alexa champions to blog about Alexa. So if you're really into Echo and Alexa, that's worth checking out.
That's very cool.
Yep. And at the risk of over-promising, be on the lookout for Cloudcast content there in the very near future. But of course, I've been promising a website for like 5 years now. So, but hopefully in the not too distant future, you will also see Cloudcast content on that exact same site, and we'll put that link in the show notes as well. Fantastic kind of one-stop shop for really good serverless content, without a doubt.
Yeah, very cool. Well, listen, guys, we know you're busy because you're going to get back to day 2 or day 3 of the Sydney AWS event. We want to thank you so much for being on. Thanks for making the time for us and coming all the way across the world. And what's the best way for anybody to go find you guys? Either on the web or at events or where? What's the best way to reach out to you?
So there's our website, acloud.guru. We also have our Twitter account is probably the best way to reach out beyond we have a support channel and stuff like that, but it's our Twitter handle is at acloudguru, one word, acloudguru. So Twitter's a great way to reach us. So we're on everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
LinkedIn, Facebook, however you communicate.
Just scream out to the void and we'll hear you. We'll hear you.
That's it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much, Sam and Peter, and thank you, Brian, as well. Hopefully we'll get everyone together, not necessarily in hotel rooms all around the world for the next podcast, but certainly to all the listeners out there. Thanks again for listening this week, and we'll talk to everyone next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.